Material there, thank you. Right, welcome Mr. Tinker. You know the drill, I suspect. 10 minutes. I'll tell you when you have 2 minutes remaining. If you wish us to ask you questions, please allow some time in your presentation. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Tim Tinker. I used to be Hastings District Councillor. I was Chairman of Engineering for 6 years and Chairman of the Resource Management Committee for 6 years, and I was on the Regional Land Transport Committee for 12 years. So that's a bit of an introduction. I'm against the Hawke's Bay Regional Council investing money in the Napier to Gisborne rail. I'm not against the government doing it, but I don't think it's the role of the council to do it. But if you do it, I think it's very important to quantify the expectations of what the outcomes of the decision and to agree to the line being recommissioned. So you really need to get in your own mind what the outcomes you want to achieve. I'll skip over some, but some people think that, say that they support, and I think most people supported opening, but it's a bit further than that. You actually have to say, what are you expecting? They say, well, we're expecting all the trucks to come off the road, and it's not going to happen. This is information in E that I've got from a couple of sources, one from one of the own council ones, which is saying that the wider regional transportation draft study on page 69 says under fuel efficiency, because of the track and everything, that there might only be a 6% difference. So that's one of your own reports is saying that. In 1993, the Transport Energy Management Policy Potential in New Zealand, Eden, was the source, said that there wasn't that much difference because of the branch rail lines and fuel economy, because of the older type engines that are being used compared with the more modern truck motors. And that was done in 93, and there's been about a 50 to 60% fuel efficiency in trucks since then. So we need to dig into the information. Don't use information from mainline where it's flat and they can tow 10,000 tonnes or whatever they tow. So I'll just flip over. In 2006, Brian Pritchard, Chairman of the Hawke's Bay Forestry Group, and Peter Fairley, CEO of Eastlands Wood Council, who represent the majority of the forest managers, did a report to the Regional Land Transport Committee, and I've written down verbatim what their conclusions when they gave us that report were. And they talked about the extra cost of handling. So I went and asked a couple of people that are pretty involved in that, and they told me that they reckon around about $10 a tonne to unload a truck, load it, store, and all that. They said that's a ballpark figure. I might be wrong in a few dollars, but it's a ballpark. So rail would have to offer that at $10 a tonne, probably cheaper than what the actual rail component to be compatible. So I think risk, you've got a couple of risks. Taking ownership of 51%, you're taking 51% of the risk. And if you're taking long-term contracts, you're tied in as well. It's not wise to look at the past as far as the weather, because we're going into a less benign stage of the interdecadal southern oscillation, which I'm sure being regional council, you will know about. We're going into the rougher sector of that oscillation, and more weather bombs and things like that. So the risk is going up for all types of road, and so if you've only got a short bit, your risk is even higher rather than spread your risk over a big network. And I know the Hastings Council storm damage has gone up in the last 10 years because we're entering that other phase. So I'll flick over. Finally, I found it very difficult to get information on it, and which I find strange. I would have thought that there would have been a written report, and I was told that there was none, so I couldn't sort of look at what was being said. So I've had to go on reports from the Regional Land Transport Committee and the wider transportation study. So if there's information that I've quoted that's wrong, I've just got the information that was given. Anyway, questions?
Thank you, Mr Tinker. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr Tinker. I'm still a little bit confused, though. You start off saying the regional council shouldn't be the one that invests, the government should be. So my first question is, do you favour keeping the railway line open? And my second question is, based on the fact that the government is not going to invest, and those people, the previous one should be well aware of that, they are not. If the government, and when the government doesn't invest, do you favour us taking that position? So 2 questions.
Do I think it should be? Personally, I don't think it's economic because you're relying on wood, and I've been told reliably by the people in the timber industry that they don't think it's a goer. They'll say they're interested because they always want to keep their options open, but you'll have to get it at least compatible with road transport before they'll be interested.
Okay.
I mean, I grow wood, and there ain't that big a margin in it. And if you're going to fork out an extra $10 on transport, you're not going to do it. And second one is no.
Yeah, both no, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, very clear. Councillor Barker.
Thank you for that. Just a question for you. Given that the Regional Council has an investment company, HBRC, would you think if this was to be made as a decision, it's a commercial entry, should this be a decision that the council should hand off to HBRC to investigate, whether it's a commercial investment or not, or do you think the council should maintain it itself for its own decision making?
So you ask me whether they should delegate that decision. There's two branches to that. You can delegate any decision you like as long as you very clearly quantify the result that you want. So if you're it's like a commissioning. If you did a commissioning document and said this is the what we want, and they delivered on that, I wouldn't get too upset. But in the end, I think you're the council, you should make the decision. The buck stops with you. They make a bad decision, the buck still stops with you. So it's probably better you make it. But if you really want, I don't think you can distance yourself from that.
I accept that the buck stops here,
Yeah.
but my point is, I guess put another way, why have a dog and bark yourself? If the council has got an investment company which is charged to making commercial investments, management investments, why wouldn't it be a better place for the decision making to be made by saying to HBRC, well, we're prepared to invest in here, but we want a return. Set what the return is to be, 5%, 2%, 3%, whatever it is.
Well, that would be your commissioning document. I haven't got a problem.
Say, well, if you can make it work for
I probably haven't got a great problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
Time for one more question. Final comments, Mr Tinker?
I guess I said at the end that before you make a decision, if you do it yourself, you should actually pull out the Regional Land Transport I've forgotten the name of it, strategy, and the wider transport one. I found that when I was chairman, I always made my staff refer back to the council's strategic documents in every report so that you knew what strategic direction you wanted to go on. I actually didn't see that anywhere, and I think that you need to refer back. That's the reason why you have those committees, to delve into those things and to do that, and I think it's important that you look at those documents, and it's also important to quantify to yourselves and to the public what you actually are going to achieve.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Tinker.
much for hearing us.
Right, let's go to Mr. McIntyre. We've a few minutes to catch up here, so Rex, if you're there, thank you. And good morning and welcome. So the normal drill, 10 minutes. I'll tell you when you've got 2 minutes remaining. If you wish us to ask you questions, please consider that in your presentation of 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for giving me time to present my verbal submission. As I stated in my submission, and many other supporters completely oppose funds from the Hawke's Bay Regional Council going to prop up the railway from Napier North. It is a very poor investment with very limited amount of freight carried, and I want to stress that. I live above the rail, I look down on it, and I know how little goes and what trouble they have. And that's been over a long period of time. I'd like to turn my attention to the very positive uses of the rail corridor. Firstly, there's the opportunity to use the rail corridor in places to greatly improve the alignment, gradient, curvature on State Highway 2, Estelle to just north of Tutira, and around Puterino, eliminating the Waikari Gorge. This would take the State Highway to a much higher standard and a very gentle gradients. A great fuel saver for all vehicles, especially loaded trucks, as the bulk of the freight is livestock, both ways. It is perishable. It's a perishable product coming back south from the Waira freezing works, and a greatly enhanced state highway is an economic shot in the arm for Northern Hawke's Bay and Gisborne. The more heavy truck movements indicate a strong economy and a prosperous population. The other possibility is to use the balance of the rail corridor as a cycleway. This would be a scenic, ecological, cultural, tourist attraction that would bring substantial economic benefits to all the communities that it passes through. The occasional train ride does not do a thing for these people. In fact, it does nothing for anyone along the corridor. I'd like to point out that most of the people who are advocating for retention of the rail are not significant ratepayers or users of, or potential users of the rail corridor or the railway. What if I ask councillors that there's a great opportunity lost if we don't develop and look at all alternatives? The Waira branch of Federated Farmers at the AGM on the 15th of May, after the Regional Council submissions had closed, passed the following remit. Waira Federated Farmers oppose Hawke's Bay Regional Council spending $5.5 million to retain the railway between Napier and Gisborne. Passed by over 40 members present and endorsed by the Gisborne branch of the Federated Farmers. That's a significant number of users and people who are very interested in it. those who I'm speaking to, and there's quite a lot from right since my talking points were in the paper, from Hawke's Bay and up around our area, and north, including Gisborne Council and Gisborne people, strongly endorse the council staff second option in your recommendations. Support, and I'll read it out, support the study already underway evaluating the economic potential of the East Coast region by the government and the Gisborne, Wairoa, Hastings District Councils, Napier City Council and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and encourage the sponsors of the study to develop a feasibility study on the best use of the railway corridor going forward. I'm open for questions. I'm sorry I didn't have a written thing, but I have trouble with computers. I've just bought a new one less than a week ago.
Terrible things, aren't they? Yeah.
Oh, terrible. And when you can't work it in the country, you're having trouble, yes.
Okay. Councillor Belford.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. You comment in your written submission quite extensively about the timber issue, yes, and whether that's a sufficient indication of demand for this project to go forward. I haven't seen, I can't recall seeing an overall profile of what the freight demand would be projected as, but timber has certainly been presented as a major driver of this. You and the previous speaker, he also commented on the short-term duration of the wall of wood, and also on the relative costs, and you go into that in some detail as to where this lumber would actually be carted to and so forth. Could you just comment more on that? I mean, if it's not unlike the dam situation and what the demand profile is for the product being offered here. If freight service is being offered as the product, is the demand actually there? And you're really calling into question in your submission that that piece of the puzzle really stands up. Could you comment further on that?
Yes, I'm happy to. I live in the area and I've watched things happen in the last long period. Most of the trees that are owned directly west of Wairoa and north of Wairoa belong to Junku Nishi Limited. And they have a factory in Gisborne, and they currently transport their logs by road to their factory in Gisborne. The trees that are grown in New Haka, there's quite an area there as well. They all, with one exception, belong to Junku Nishi Limited. So there's not the forests around on that section of the Wairoa district that is likely to have timber coming south. The other point I make is that most of the trees that are there that are not committed belong to Roger Dickey syndicates, and they were planted between 92 and 96, so they're not quite mature yet. They've got about another 4 or 5 years to go before they're capable of being harvested. There's one exception to that, and that's Rukaturi Station, which is north of Wairoa on the back road, Tineroda, State Highway 38, State Highway 35, I've forgotten, on the Tineroda Road, and that's Rukaturi Station. And there's quite a big amount of trees there owned by Roger Dickey syndicates. And they, if you looked at the roading system, they would travel north through Tineroda anywhere to Gisborne or back down this way. They are probably trees that could come this way, because once you get out of the Rukaturi Valley, all the terrain in the gullies lead down to a place called Murramur, and I would imagine that's where they'll cart the trees downhill, down the gullies and out through Wairoa. So, but they belong to the Roger Dickey syndicate. Then the bulk of the other forests of Roger Dickey are about 12 k's average south of Wairoa. And Mr. Tinker mentioned Brian Pritchard and Panpac in the northern area have trees that they're cutting now to keep their mill going that are a little immature, and they are very keen on purchasing all Roger Dickey syndicate trees and bringing them down and not harvesting their own forests and let them get more mature and then process them in 4 or 5, 6 years' time. So you've got about a window of about 4 or 5 years of trees that are there that could be put on the rail, that if they come to Pan Pac they will be carted by truck because it's less than 100k, and the cost of transshipping is quite huge, and there's no rail siding at Pan Pac. So that's why I believe, and I strongly believe, there's no wall of wood in the Waira district. It is just not there. And so that would probably answer your question.
You have one question, Councillor Graham. Last question.
I have two short questions. Firstly, I just want to get that right. Federated farmers in Wairau do not support the rail proposal?
That's right.
The second question is, there's lots of rumour and story around developing a dairy industry in Wairau. Do you think that would add to the rail argument if a dairy industry did get developed around the Wairau region?
Well, I take it as a rumour and a hypothesis like you do at the moment. Personally, number one is that if they develop the dairy industry, they hope to build a factory in Gisborne, and that takes it by road north, which is a short distance. And what's your second question? That was it. Personally, I don't believe that Wairau hasn't got the large area of land suitable for dairying. They could do far better by upgrading their management and their technology in sheep farming and do a lot better. And also, I'm against dairying or milk out of Wairau because it doesn't support our population. It's carted away.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. It's 10 minutes up, and thank you for your very clear presentation. Right, now, there's Ratima. It's right there. Kia ora. Kia ora, Des. Now, you are renowned for your oratory, but you're only allowed 10 minutes, and I will stop you mid-flight if required. But I'll give you 2 minutes warning of that. So, kia ora and welcome.
I'm frightened what to say next. Take off my time. Look, I'm here to do you guys a favour today and help you guys make up your mind about what happens to the railway. It's pretty clear to us. I'm here sitting as the chair of the Takitimu District Māori Council, which is a Māori council that's affiliated or that exists under the New Zealand Māori Council, which exists under the Māori Community Development Act 1962. Within the mandate of the council are the interests of Māori. Hapu from Runga Mai Wahine have approached me as the chair of the Māori Council and asked that I submit on their behalf their support, firstly, for the railway being reopened. They see in the reopening of the line employment opportunities for their people up that end of the country. Many of them were employed when the line was running, and so the experience in this area that says that there's employment opportunities available is well founded. Secondly, the need for the railway line to remain open is based on the fact that the land was taken under the Public Works Act, and that if it's going to be left dormant or unused, or even, heaven forbid, turned into a tourism track, then they want the land back. And it's as clear as that for them, and that's the views that I bring here, that they support it being reopened. Actually, who pays for it? They're not all that concerned. They just know that it needs to be reopened for a whole range of reasons, and I'm not here to preach the economic benefits one way or the other. There's people far more educated and qualified in that area than myself. It's purely from the emotional aspect of the people of Runga Mai Wahine and I guess Māori katoa that had the land taken off them to build a railway line. The railway line, then its process of being built and used and maintained provided employment for Māori in rural communities. They see the return of the line as being able to be a return for employment opportunities for them. If in the case that it isn't supported and it doesn't go forward, then give the land back. It's as clear as that. It can't be diverted into alternate uses like cycleways, tourism pathways, or whatever. That wasn't the premise on which the land was taken. Railway line or no railway line. Land for the railway line or land back to the people. It's as clear as it gets. And have I got any time left? I might want to talk some other things. No, that's it.
7 minutes.
Well, look, I've got an audience out there. It's fantastic. But I just that's the strength of it. It has to be that clear for us. The emotion, the responsibilities, the delegations, the economics are questions brand new people that I have to deal with. But purely from the perspective of our people, that's about jobs firstly, and it's a tested foundation. And if there ain't no jobs, there ain't no rail lines, then give the land back. It's as simple as it gets, and I don't think there should be any confusion around any of those aspects. Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Mohi.
So, given that the railway is fenced and we've got the land back, there would be one big long paddock, which you could just subdivide into a big long farm.
It would be great, wouldn't it? We'll put it in the sheep.
I have one comment on that. An associate of mine who happens to be Māori, he wants the shingle.
Happen.
Carved up before our eyes here. Any I know you're talking about. Any questions? I have a question, just a very basic question. Following that logic, if the regional council on that logic should invest, do those same people, are they comfortable with rates going up to potentially cover this? Should we all spend more on this, is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I think, inevitably we're talking about a community that's already at the bottom of a whole lot of rungs. And any increase on anything, whether it's rates or power or communications, has a huge impact at that end of the country. Does that mean that because of that they wouldn't support the rail going in? I think their views would be give the rail, reopen the rail or return the land. If that means an increase in cost, then that's a part of it, because it should be offset by an increase in employment.
Thank you. Okay. Other questions? Final comments?
Such a fantastic presentation.
You've stunned us. You've stunned us into silence.
It's stunned you. I've only used a part of my time. I've introduced a bit of humour, and you'll get to enjoy the rest of your day. Look, this is the first time I've appeared before the council in a submission process, so it's a bit new to me, so I was glad to come along a bit early and see how it all ticks over. I presented yesterday at the Hastings District Council. They were a lot stingier on their time. Only gave me 5 minutes over there to present on 5 takis. But what's important to me in terms of this process is that now the concerns of Māori are placed. There is a record of this happening. There is a start point if there are things that need to happen further on down the line, which is why this process was important for us to participate in. And so having done that, having initiated the conversation, having placed a real concern before the council, I think my job's done. And I look forward to whatever comes out in terms of a result, because this submission today will form the basis of whatever needs to follow to ensure that either the land's returned or the railway's opened. So thank you for your time.
Kia ora. Okay, right, well, let's now break for morning tea. We'll be back here by 10:02, please. So join us, everyone, for a cup of tea out the back. Now the meeting's adjourned. Just a